Season 6, episode 30, number 248 of the Decoded podcast. Chris, I think this is the first time ever we've actually started the podcast when we were supposed to. Like, as the timer was, so I said to you, "Hey, shall we drop in?" You're like, "Yeah, why not?" I look up at the timer and it's literally under a minute counting down to when we're supposed to go on air, and it's like
Mhm,
I don't recall ever doing that. I just remember always the clock runs out, we're still doing our thing, then we
mhm.
jump in and do the cast.
I like that the whole "supposed to" is is rather arbitrary. Like, I appreciate that. Like, we try and sort of keep it within that time, but I like that we're not obligated to hold that time,
I
right?
think
When the
yes.
I actually kinda liked the message you sent this morning just saying, when you're in the room, and you've said this before, but I liked it. When you're in the room, message me. Like, just text me.
Well, it's okay. So there's been an evolution in my world. So here's the evolution. We say, okay, let's meet at a certain time. We used to say, I feel it's different now. I feel like we used to say, hey, okay, 7:30, let's be in the room.
And we pushed to it.
We did, yeah. But then over time, it's like one of us is there or ready and the other one's not. And I would say, and again, this is just my perspective, I would say that both of us have given each other a lot of grace around that. Like, you've not sat me down and said, listen, we need to talk. You're never in the room when you say you're going to be in the room. And I've not done that to you. I think we just are like, okay, well, so it's evolved into like last night, I purposely said to you, I will send you the link and we'll be in the room between 7:30 and 7:50, I think I said. So it's like there's a 20-minute window where we'll be floating. And
Mhm,
then it's come to the point for me where if I'm in the room and you're not, I just message you like this morning. I'm like, I'm in the room. Message me when you get here, and then I can get up and go do a couple of other things and not have to sit here and be like, "Where's Clough?" Because
yeah.
past it's been like, "Oh, I wonder if Chris is okay. Like, what's going on?" He said he'd be here. Now it's like Clough's doing whatever's going on at home. You message me back. You say, "I'm just grabbing my coffee. I'll be there in a couple of minutes." I'm like, "Okay." And then I happen to be sitting here when you jumped into the room. So it was
Mhm.
like, I just feel like there's been an evolution of grace amongst friends. Um,
I'm not good with grace. I don't
oh,
actually do yeah, in general. No, no, no. Like, I'm not complaining. It's interesting you mentioned that because generally I'm pretty type A when trying to hold a commitment. So I don't know. That's cool. I didn't. I do. I completely agree with you. I just um hadn't. I don't think I'm a very graceful person. I don't.
ah,
I don't offer it. I don't offer it. I don't expect it. Um, I tend to fall more on the side of, if make sure you're like, if you dare to commit, then you're also daring to sort of like be to deliver, kind of a thing. So it's funny, I don't that's fascinating that you would say that, because I don't see myself as a graceful or a grace giving individual. I'm a bit of a
well,
jackal.
here, this is interesting to me because as someone who's known you for maybe, I'm guessing, around 7 years at this
Yeah,
point,
yeah. Yep.
um, a couple of things. The first one is I've been really, surprise isn't the right word. I've been learning more about you from your Twitter feed lately than the 7 years that we've been talking face to face. Number one, you've tweeted stuff and I'm like, really? You struggle with this, or you struggle with that, which is interesting to me. And fine, it's kind of cool, but it's different. And then, so for me, the minute you didn't adhere to the timelines we set was the minute where I was like you. So your, how do I say this? Your type A personality, and the minute that you didn't adhere to a timeline that you said you were going to adhere to, for me, then it goes out the window. It's like it's a free for all now. If Clough is good to just come when he can, I'm okay to mirror that.
Hmm.
And unless you sit me down, you say, "Hey, can we talk about this?" And then I'd be like, "Yeah, well, of course we can talk about it." And of course, I'm going to mention the fact that you didn't adhere to the timelines either. So it's like, yeah, we can talk about it, but it's going to go both ways. It's not going to be it's not going to be just a one-sided conversation like, "Hey, Chidiac, like you say 7:30 and then you come in at 7:50." And it's like, "Okay, bro, it's time for some self-reflection.
Hmm.
Are you part of this, or are you just gonna nail me when I'm late?" kind of thing. So I don't know, just very interesting and a little bit refreshing to be able to talk. I, I wouldn't even say the word blunt because you and I just go back and forth. There is no blunt, there is no it just is. And but I don't get to have these conversations with everybody
Hmm.
because number one, I don't want to. And number two, it takes time and energy. And I'm going to put my time and energy into where really, I think where I can really get some dividends. So,
Yeah.
anyway, having said all that, I like that you don't see yourself that way. But from my perspective, I feel and think that there's grace both ways. Because when I'm uber late and you're sitting in the room, you seem to go with the flow, whether you
Hmm.
like it or not. And I would I appreciate you go with the flow, but I'd also, if you say to me, "Hey, this isn't cool," I'll say, "Okay, that I appreciate that too. So I'm gonna nail this down on my end." But then I'm a bit of a beep because then the next time you don't adhere to the time and you're the one that brought the conversation to me, then I'm gonna
Hmm.
say, "Hey, this isn't cool, bro. You were the one telling me wasn't cool on my end, but now you're
Yep.
doing it. I don't get that. That doesn't float for me. So can we figure this out?"
And the thing, so my add-on to that, so my upbringing, and I still, it's come up on the pod here, and you and I have talked at length, like how one of the things that I experienced as a kid growing up were the secret lists. I like that you bring this out, the secret lists of expectation. And both of my parents were big. They would punish me, but they were also big on well, you've really disappointed us. And, at some point that gets washed, is and it no longer has the power. It doesn't have the power to compel me to do anything anymore, but it sticks with you as far as a tactic of like a relationship tactic where you're not clear with maybe what your needs are in any given moment. So when people don't deliver this thing that you expect, instead of saying, I actually, like, on the front end, I actually wanted you to be here, on time. I wanted you to want to be here on time. But so I'm going to tell you afterwards, or I'm going to, that I was saddened by it, but I'm not going to tell you in time. I'm not going to tell you when it's happening. I'm going to pout. I'm going to be sour. I'm going to have a mini tantrum. And that was my experience growing up. That was the tactic of how my parents kind of, I would say more so than not, disciplined me. Like that's how they kind of came at me, that I made decisions that disappointed them. And it took me until like well into my marriage to notice that I was operating in a very similar manner. I wasn't being clear. I wasn't being clear with people about, if I was asking something to be done, or, a certain task in the house had to be done. I'm sort of doing the waiting and watching and then start to do it. And when somebody says, "Oh, let me help," I'm like, "Well, of course, now you're going to help." Or like, "Why are you doing that?" I said I would do it. "Well, it had to be done." Like you're sort of like laying down this stealth mode of you are the only one operating in like in reality, and everyone else is kind of like hostile to that reality. So growing up, it took me a while. And I'm still working through it. And I've said to Karen a few times, as soon as I did that, I saw my parents. That's how my parents deal, and I don't want to deal with things like that. So I think when I say I don't have grace, it's because I'm in this weird I don't see grace in me, and I don't offer grace because I'm in this weird transition that um grace has been a little bit weaponized because of my upbringing. That when you to sort of give someone space to allow them to kind of do what they need to do, to kind of let them make decisions, whether you agree or disagree, it somehow is going to turn out like some sort of zero sum for me. Like I'm going to lose. And the only way that I win and stay well and stay in control and stay sort of on track with my needs is for me to kind of get it done myself, right? Get it done myself. And then still, if I get it done myself, I help hold other people accountable for not helping me. Yet I'm the one that's spinning this idea of getting it done myself. So yeah, that I've had to learn not less about how to deliver grace, because there is an element of that that I think happens naturally in trusting relationships. But I've had to learn how to notice when I'm holding back, like when I'm actually blocking myself from operating in that way. And in doing so, it's almost just by releasing that moment, you become graceful. Like you become more graceful and understanding and compassionate. So if I take it back to yours and my discussion, it really is, I think, because you and I have just talked a lot about the importance of maintaining our lives around across multiple sort of spaces of interest and connection. And like today, you're going to be going doing some lawn work. Now you're not going to do lawn work. Like um, time to do the pod. Don't know if we have the time to do the pod, whether we start at 7:30 or we start like there's an ease that there's no compromise. I feel no sort of compromise is the wrong word. I don't feel how do I do this? It's sort of like the commitment to the pod is a broader commitment to just the friendship. And if I say the friendship is ongoing, then that means things that happen out of the friendship are exactly as they should be. And if there's something that it's I don't have to do a lot of work to say to you, yeah, like I can't do Friday or I can't do Saturday. And then we tend to say, okay, well, we'll bump it. We don't want to, we actually want to do it, but it looks like life just has stuff that we need to take care of. I think the struggle for me is making sure I keep my hand on the wheel, not to control the situation, but on the hand on the wheel of my decision making and how I lens that moment of grace. So that's the long Saturday morning TEDx decoded version of that.
So I have to say there are lots of layers here for me because
Okay.
I tend to be an on time guy. And maybe here's the cool thing, you might not think that because in our time of doing the Decoded podcast, we've evolved into both of us just kind of walk in the room within a certain window of time. I've if you ask my wife or my kids, they'll tell you that is not me, and they'll be very surprised to hear that. So with this arrangement and in the confines of this friendship, I come and go as I please within a window here. Same with you. And it's not like I'm sitting downstairs with my feet up, laughing, thinking I'm just going to be late for Decoded today. It's like, that's not how it goes. It's, oh, shoot, too much time was spent with the rabbit. I better go and get my coffee now or my water or whatever it is. And it's like, I'll message Chris and tell him I'm on my way. And for me, that comes, the being on time comes from not having any control as a kid and just showing up places whenever my parents got me there, which really, I guess, upset me, did something to my psyche. So now it's like I like to get places a few minutes before I'm supposed to be there, to the point where my wife is like, "You can't go there in there now. Why? You're too early." And I'm like, "Okay, then I'll just wait until the actual time." And she's like, "But then," I'm like, "No, no but thens. For me, that's not how it works. I said this time, or they said this time." I've noticed in life there's always that buffer time. You walk in and somebody else is, they're doing their thing. They're decoding. Let's give it a word where it's like, "Oh yeah, I told you 8:30, but I'll get to you at 8:45 because I got a few things I got to take care of." "Oh, you're going to decode me? No problem. I'll walk in at 8:25 and then maybe you'll be ready to meet with me at 8:35. So I'll adjust and you'll adjust," which is kind of fun for me to consider. But with this arrangement here, it's like you and I just kind of dance with it. And I guess if you ask anybody who knows me well outside of my friendship with you, they'll tell you no, when Roland says he's going to be somewhere at a time, he magically appears at that time or a minute or two before so he can get up the elevator or get up the stairs. So if you tell me, Roland, let's meet at 8:30 in the morning, and you live in this huge tower and it's going to take 5 minutes to park, 10 minutes to get in the building and up the elevator, I have to be there at like, I'll probably get there at 8 so that, I can park and then I can get in the building and then I can start to play with my time. Maybe I'll sit on the nice couch that they have in the waiting section because those places are always decked out, right? So you sit there and you check my phone, maybe get the elevator, go up. Maybe I go up to your level and then I sit on the in the waiting area by the elevators. Oh, okay, 1 minute to my visiting Chris. Go knock on the door. I'm here. You're like, oh yeah, perfect. You're on time. Yeah, but I did all this to make that happen. That's that's I think what my family would tell you. Um, and then there's the whole shoot, I lost it. Maybe it'll come back to me, but is the on time. Oh, and then there's the whole, so if I can extrapolate a little bit and move this to my career. When I became a teacher, when people at in Ottawa found out I was a teacher, they literally fell off their chairs because as a student, they did not see teacher material, whatever it is that they envisioned. And I'm telling you that because when I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm a teacher." And they're like, "Excuse me?" They said, "Excuse me," because I was a student that never, not that's not true. That rarely for most of my educational career didn't care. But I didn't care because I felt helpless and hopeless.
I always felt like it was like it wasn't that you didn't. Some of the stories it makes me think like you couldn't. The context just kept you from giving that care to what everyone else seemed to care about. Like there are just certain things that kind of knocked you around a bit. I can't speak to later on, but some of the high school stories that you told me, that's what I thought. It's like you couldn't care because what you were being asked to care about didn't really care about you, it seemed like.
That's a great perspective. There's a little bit of that too, but there's also well, the storyline goes that when I hit grade 12/13, I'm somewhere in there, it was when I was like, I don't know who I told this to recently, but that's when the rubber hit the road. That's when I said to myself, I said, "Okay, you are going to turn this around, and you're going to turn this around. You're going to care and you're going to give it 110% so that at the end of it, if you succeed, awesome. If you don't succeed, awesome, because you did everything you could do within your control to succeed." It was like at that point in time, I felt like I was going down pretty fast. It's like, well, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down like just I'm going to burn everything with me. That's what I thought. I thought there's no way I'm going by myself. I'm taking everything and anything I can hold on to with me because that's the only way I'm going to have peace of mind. Because it was, like I said to you, lack of control, lack of power, didn't care because I was helpless and hopeless. I wanted to care. So what, I don't know what happened. I literally snapped out of it. And that's the thing, that's the switch. Like sometimes I tell the kids I work with and I tell the parents and other people involved, it needs to switch, but I can't make that switch. I can maybe be an ingredient that leads to the switch being flipped, but we can't do it. The kid has to find something inside of them. Um, I found it and I hit it, and then it was on and it worked. But I'll tell you a funny moment. I'm sitting in, so it's grade 13 and it's springtime. Okay, so all the snow's gone, the sun's out, it's hot as heck. And it was world issues class. Mr. Davis, great teacher. Um, great teacher. I walk into class on like a Thursday afternoon after lunch, and he literally looks at me and goes, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, I'm here for class. And he had heard that everybody was going to skip to go to so and so's house to swim. And so he's like, this is awesome. I'm going to get a prep period. Nobody's going to come to class because they're all, and he didn't care. And I walk in. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm here for class. He goes, nobody's coming to class. I said, yeah, but I skipped it all of grade 9 and all of grade 10. I've done that thing. I've done that bit. That's dead to me now. It's over. Number one, if I skip and I get caught, my father will literally kill me. So I'm not going down like that. Number one. Number two, I don't want to go. So, like, unless you tell me go to the library and work for the next 75 minutes or whatever, I'm staying. Like, what do you want me to do? He's like, you can stay in here and work. That's fine. I'm like, okay. What do you want me to work on? And we negotiated and I started working. And nobody else was there. I had already done my BS. I wasn't going down that road. Remember, if I was going to fail, I was going to fail in a blaze of glory so that at the end of the day, sitting down deep wherever, where all the ashes are, people looking around, what are you here for? Well, I did everything I could and I just couldn't succeed. But at least I can sit here in the ashes in peace. So, yeah, all that from control, expectations, grace. It was funny. So if we could, I'm gonna. If you want to shift into the topic you wanted to talk about, I think it's a great place to jump into because of kind of the conversation we're having around grace and around being honest. I've never been more honest in my work than I am now. And I think it's because you've got me thinking, I'm so hyper focused in my job. My job is so hyper focused that if I don't do my job, I won't be doing anything because there's nothing else to distract me because my job is so hyper focused that if I'm not doing it, I'm literally doing nothing, which is weird because it was never like that in the classroom. In the classroom, if I shirked some responsibilities here or there, it was okay because there was a million responsibilities. I don't have a million responsibilities anymore. I have like 10. And if I'm not doing them, I'm literally useless.
Yeah, yeah. That's that is the, let's say, the thought trap, or um the work trap of professionally managed portfolios, right? Like, it's this, we all know that classrooms typically get the lens, media, parents, community, um, stuff that's in the classroom is kind of like the driving force to conversations around education. But that's kind of like saying, that's kind of like Lego bricks that have no connectors, which, Lego bricks without connectors aren't as much fun to build stuff with. You'd just be stacking these pieces on top of one another, and a light wind would just kind of like knock it down, or a shift in the base below it, it would fall down. You couldn't build structures that sort of span sideways, or sort of spiral, or wrap around, or like your whole construction element falls apart. And I like that idea of Lego because Lego um, makes the adhesive portable. Like, one piece connects with another, and you have to really think about that configuration. And I've seen some construction with Lego that it seems to defy logic, but it still stays together. It might not be able to pick it up and play with it like a full toy, but if you decide to just use the corner of a 6 brick with like a 3, and you have it sort of kind of coming off, and you rotate, like, that's not a stable connector, but you can build around that and kind of build some stability. um Lincoln Logs, Ringamajigs, any of these other sort of construction toys. um I think in education, though, that those pieces, like the classroom piece, let's say, it doesn't automatically come with the connector pieces. It doesn't automatically come with those little bumps on them to be able to snap nicely into other, like, even the two classes side by side. could have zero connectivity whatsoever. You might not even necessarily know the person teaching in next door, depending on, how that kind of works out. I know in high school, sometimes we get to keep our same classrooms. The last couple years, because of construction, we're being shifted around frequently. So the spaces that the neighborhoods, let's say, that you're teaching in your school are no longer your neighborhood. You've had to sort of uproot yourself and move to the other side of the school. Other people are kind of moving in. So there's a nomadic kind of nature sometimes to working in a high school where you carry your culture and your pedagogy and whatever it is you've learned, whatever it is that makes you comfortable, you have to carry it to a new space. All this to say that what we were talking about, and I said that I want to talk about, it was that moment where you're in a conversation, you kind of know you're in that mortar moment, you're in that sticky moment between the two Lego bricks where conversations are happening and you have a piece of reality. So you're one brick, one piece of material that you have the potential to change how that other brick connects with a situation. And that can be really uncomfortable for some people. Let me make it less abstract. This past week, there was a conversation that happened about a part of my crew where the information that I heard talked about in this meeting, a meeting I wasn't a part of, I don't know why. I have no context as to why I didn't make it to the meeting. I don't take it as I won't take it as that I was kept from being invited. I think the conversation I think it was like an opportunistic conversation. Just enough of the right people were there to talk about a situation. So they had the convo. Then I found out about it afterwards. But in that discussion, there were the way that the student was discussed is that there was things that were introduced into the conversation that I would say, had I been there in the conversation, I would have countered right away. I would have said, no, that's not true. I would have said that's not true. And I would have also doubled down to include, it's really important for us not to sort of build this schema about the kid, because as soon as we do that, it's going to keep us from making decisions, like creating this schema right now away from working with the child will impact what happens when you go back to the child. So the disconnecting of the bricks, and then you connect it together in a very specific way when you're back with the kid. And it got me really thinking about this sort of like that power that's necessary. Maybe power is the wrong word. I mean, it could be, I guess, power, influence, some courage, clarity, intention to stay to when you're in that conversation and kind of supporting a kid, that you have to step out of objectivity sometimes to actually step into a new schema and say, no, this isn't how this kid operates. I have no evidence to suggest that this is actually how this kid operates. And what's happening is you're suggesting a schema that's based on your sort of fear of what might happen. Like you're creating dots that this particular behavior, well, if they're going to do this, they're going to do this. And if they're going to do that, and eventually kind of get out into this like diffusive area where it's either anxiety or worry. Like it's not real anymore. And it got me thinking about how, what that moment looks like to kind of do a stopper in a meeting and say, no, we should not, it's dangerous to pursue this conversation, because as soon as we start to create that schema, it's going to create hesitation in using the plan that we have. And I have encountered other people. This is a good example is new teachers, because they don't know what they don't know. So you have a kid misbehaving. It's your first class. You have this kid misbehaving in classroom. You don't have the depth of experience of a 10-year teacher to kind of go, okay, to even know you should have read the IEP, or to know you should have talked to the teacher next door who had them in the previous year. You're experiencing that behavior raw, full force, and whatever's happening right in front of you. You don't even know that you have a choice about whether that behavior is actually as bad as it is, because you're taking it all in emotionally. Where I get kind of frustrated, it's frustrated, lowercase frustrated, is when I'm working with 10-year teachers and they're still operating in that space. That it doesn't seem like they have they don't have all the tools to sort of deal with um, kids that I get it. I get it. Lots of kids, lots of schemes, lots of stuff. But just where they haven't even done the work to sort of have a conversation beside the behavior. They're only having conversations about the behavior. So they haven't necessarily done some research. They haven't talked to other supportive staff. They haven't taken any sort of PD to kind of improve their lens. So they haven't really grown since their first 5 years of teaching. And again, if we go back to that whole idea, is that if you're a bit of a nomadic, there's a nomadic nature to your school, it's incumbent on you to sort of develop those skills, because you can't necessarily depend on being in the same space, the same class, all the same stuff that can give you some calmness and coolness and a stabilizing effect to your teaching. I mean, it can have a dulling effect to your teaching too. If you've had the same classroom for 20 years, like I'll be the one to say, I think that's a mistake. Like no teacher should ever have the same classroom for 20 years, like the same room. I don't think that's a good idea. But I know that there's some teachers that get that. And there's teachers that's their jam. But I also think it creates impediments, and it creates a schema that makes it really difficult to see new kids as new kids. I think it makes it really difficult. There was a lot there. I went on and on. But that's my thing. It's the advocate. It's being the advocate. It's the person that can say no. It's being in the meeting where there's learned people kind of suggesting that this is the way, and you can be the anti Mandalorian, say this is not the way. This is not the way.
I like that, and you can we can start using that if you like. This
Yeah,
is
this is
not the
not.
way. Decoded podcast. This is not the way. It's a great T-shirt,
Yes.
actually. Um, so I live in the same space as like kind of what you're talking about, right? And for me, it's funny at this point in the game. For me, it's like there have been times where I've said to people on the other side of the table, right? So I'm like, hey, here, let's try a couple of these things. And I try to say it in a way that doesn't offend everybody there, because supposedly they've tried everything, right? To
Let's
help
is
the kid.
also dangerously close to the royal we.
Okay. And I try to, well, I'll tell you why I do that.
Do
Because
it.
if I zero in on people and start telling them what I think they should try,
Mhm,
then what I've seen more often than not is that's me telling them what to do. And
mhm,
they get their back up pretty darn quick, especially if
mhm.
it's a principal. Like, how dare you tell me what to do? So I try not to go there. This is what I do. This is what I've done. I've said, let's think about, and I do that on purpose because it's not nailing anybody down at the moment. Let's think about trying these couple of things and see what happens. Because they think that when I might say something, then, oh my God, we're going to have to change the world to make. I'm like, we're not changing the world. We're providing one more or one different opportunity for this student and possibly the family. Let's see what the reaction is. Let's see what happens. And now, after we do that, I tell them what my role. I tell them, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. And then this is what I'm doing. What are you going to do? And it is like it's a bit of a psychology salad, because it's like you should see some of the people I work with. They don't ever want to be told what to do. It's like if they got to know me, they would see that that's not how I roll. But they don't know me. The people that know me know that, okay, there's a give and take. Like, there have been times with certain principals that say to me, they're like, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" Yeah, of course. We talk. They're like, "Okay, I'm gonna nail this kid to the wall. I'm suspending him for 3 days." I'm like, "Okay," and they're like, "Okay," because they're waiting for me to jump on them and defend the kid. I'm like, "I'm not gonna defend the kid. If these are the facts of the situation, you need to do your job. My job is not to suspend the student. My job is to support them and coach them, and try to be that middle person that doesn't belong to the school." Right? So I try to be that, because sometimes more often than not, they need that. They need a human who is like gonna push them, coach them, mentor them, help them with their learning, but I'm not writing a report card and I'm not suspending anybody. So I say to the principal, do what you need to do. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you if this is what they need, if this is what you need, do your job. And I don't tell you how to do your job. And sometimes I remind principals, hey, don't, you're the principal. And then they kind of look at me and I'm like, you're the principal. Like you get to make certain decisions. I'm the re-engagement teacher. Together, we can work well. So you can give me some of what I think I need, and I can give you some of what you think you need. And at the end of the day, that will help the kid.
Mhm.
So there's it's a psychology salad. There's a lot going on. It depends who I'm talking to, depends if we have a relationship or not. Depends if I want to have a relationship with them or not. That's the other thing too. I'm part of that equation, right? I can make or break it. Um, but this business of like I was telling you that there have been some meetings for some of my students that I've not been included in. And then people will say to me, "Oh, remember no, I don't remember the meeting because I wasn't invited." Well, you should have been there. Well, nobody thought I should be there. And then I was at meetings where they were so thankful I was there because if you just stop and look at what I do, I work as intensely as I can with a small number of students, but more often. So I'm connecting with kids 5 days a week. I'm connecting with them 2 to 4 times a week. And that could be on their porch or that could be in the classroom. So there's a lot of there's a lot of connection. And over time, because it's like a very focused connection, I see things that maybe other people don't have time to look for. That's the beauty of my job. So when you call me in, I better know my student because I've been with them so much.
Yeah.
I can bring that to the table. So when we're in a transition meeting and the high school vice principal says, Roland, what do you think about this? I'll say, okay, based on my observations and my time with this kid since September, and it's April now, this is what I would say based on my experience with this kid. And, you know, some people they get a lot of value for what I have to say because they're like, okay, if you've been with them for this long, 3 times a week for like an hour, and they're still not telling you why they're not going to school, we got a big problem here. Like, what's going on with social work? What's going on at home? What's going on? Because because sometimes I can say, this is the problem. This is what the kid has told me is the problem over and over again. Not sure why nobody believes the kid, but this is what they keep telling me is the problem. And we're working on it. And sometimes we can't do anything about it because there are other players in the game who don't want to hear what I've got to say. Therefore, nothing moves in the right direction. So, but my job, just like your job, is to speak for that kid where I can.
Mhm.
And I try not to sugarcoat. I know some of my kids, most of my kids, self sabotage and they walk in and out of the building hopeless and helpless. And it appears like they don't care. I've been there. I get it. I've come out of that. I try to tell them, guys, gals, I was just like you. Except it didn't get this far because my father would have killed me. Like it always comes back to my parents. My parents didn't have time to hold my hand and help me with school and stuff. But I tell you something, when they get the call that I'm not at school, that's a near death experience for me and I cared about that. So I tried not to make that happen. These kids are so far gone, they don't even care about that. Like tell my parents I don't care. What are they going to do? It's like, oh shoot, what are they gonna do? Your parents have no clout over you, and now I'm trying to get some. Anyway,
I
thanks for
like
that.
the yeah, I the what are they going to do? I've started to hear that question in a different way, and this is a good example of kind of getting outside of the neurotypical pedagogitypical you see where I'm going, right? The the row on row classroom, these Lego bricks stick together very conveniently. I've started to hear that statement differently because I've been in those conversations too, where someone at the table is weaponizing the parent in order to encourage the kid to come back to school. Well, we're going to call your parents then. Go for it. Right? And I've seen a lot of different versions of the front end of the languishing, where the kids are just, dead eyeing you, like, you do what you got to do, bro. Because and that statement of, what are my parents going to do? When I first heard it, my brain automatically wanted to defend the parents' honor somehow. Like, how dare you sort of say that your parents aren't going to do something? Like, I was expecting the parent would punish the kid into compliance. Like, that was kind of like the conversation that we were in. Okay, you don't show up for your attendance, I'm calling your parents. Okay, you won't stop taking people's lunches, we're calling your parents. Sort of like, and well, what are my parents going to do? Um, it it started down that path that was like, what could my parents possibly do to keep me from this preferred behavior? But I've started to hear a different version, and when I mean start, it's like it's taken for a few years for me to get out of the tone deafness to hear that statement in a different way. And I started to hear it as, you don't understand. There's nothing my parents are capable or willing or interested in doing to make my life at school better. So the kid is telling you flat out, they're on their own with this. And to call the parent, it's not just it may be as well that they're dissing their parents, and it's kind of flexing a little bit like, I got power of my parents. But I've also started to hear some of the pain in that and some frustration, and that my parents are not capable of being the person that you think they are. All I got, all I got is you here at the table, and even you can't sort of make my time better too. Remember, I worked with a kid. I think what started me thinking about this was I worked with this kid, Joe, way back in the day when I was first started teaching spec ed. And Joe, like, we were talking about report card times. And similar to kind of like some of the kids were rocking, like what you're saying, um, this idea that if you didn't comply or perform according to expectations, I started this pod talking about that invisible list. Sometimes this is an invisible list. I didn't have that same like fear of a near death experience of my parents, but I knew damn well that there was an invisible list that I would just be shaming myself with. I somehow wasn't fulfilling the expectations of my parents. So I was still in their control, but in a different way than, let's say, you were. But still, I think the underlying drive here is, I don't want to ruffle my parents' feathers. I want them to be happy, and I want them to be happy with me. So I'm going to do a thing to make sure that I can keep that all in check. So we're talking about the report cards, and a few kids around the table were talking about, yeah, like, it's not going to be good, or yeah, I think I did pretty good. My parents um, are going to be happy with me. There was one kid that said, oh, they're like, I won't be going out this weekend. Like, I'm gonna be so punished, like, because I know what's going to be arriving at home. And Joe piped in at the end, and Joe said, I wish. He said, I would take any of that. I would take any reaction from my parent in this case. And everyone kind of stopped. He goes, my report cards have been on a stack in the center of their dining room table for the last 2 years. There's been no conversation. I just take it home. And, I've had lots of conversations with kids, helping them with their morning routine. And I'll say to them, when you take your report card home, make sure that you put it in the spot that is like the inbox. So your parents know they have to sign it, and they leave it there. You pick it up and you take it back with you. And they're like, well, we don't have that. I'm like, put it in your boot. Roll it in your boot so that you see it. Well, I don't have that. Okay, put it in your lunchbox. So you go through all the possible things to make that, snail mail move back and forth. So Joe was rocking that exact thing. The dining room table at some point was the spot where you put documents that you would have some sort of a connection, a discussion, some sort of back and forth between kid and parent, maybe good, maybe bad, but there was connection. Joe was very clear. That doesn't happen anymore. What are my parents going to do? Read my report card? What are my parents going to do? Talk to me about it? There's a stack in the center of the table there. It's been there for 2 years. What are my parents going to do? They have a conversation with me. My dad hasn't talked to me in like 3 months. I haven't seen them. They're working like 22 shifts a week. What are my parents going to do? Take a day off and come in and talk to you about helping me? You're not helping me. My parents aren't helping me. What are my parents going to do? So I've started to hear that statement in a far more pleading, like plaintiff kind of way. I know my starting point was you're dissing your parents, don't do that. And my intention was to bring in a power player to enforce a behavior that the school is expecting of the kid. And I think I'll say my experience, and it sounds in a lot of ways your experience, boxes that out. Like it's not a thing anymore. I'm less and less interested in conversations where I'm expecting the parent to jump in and help in a school context. And I told you this, I think, a couple months ago. I'm more interested in how does the school do better to help the whole family? Because that's the reality. And I find that's also the space that I'm speaking to when I show up at a student success meeting or an in school team meeting or a meeting where, a reentry meeting where kids coming back from suspension or expulsion. We have to have a handle on the reality and the understanding of that second version of what are my parents going to do. I think in order to get any headway whatsoever to help a kid. So thanks for that. I think that's a really, I don't know if we have listeners. I wish we did, but I think this is a fundamental and foundational shift that educators can use to really help them see it. I'm not saying it isn't messy, and I'm definitely not suggesting that it's simple. But the relationship building, that's where the action is. You standing on a front porch or at the sidewalk, bringing school to the house is a next level experience, even more powerful some ways than when we were teaching in their living rooms via Zoom 2 years ago. Because it's IRL. It's another human standing in front of another human's homestead saying, I'd like to kind of help you get your kid to school. And you're seeing it, smelling it, being sort of like you're interacting with it. So there's yeah, it's just another version in the chapter of the book that I've, never written that you could just find in most of my feeds. That idea that we should be talking about curriculum here. And curriculum isn't the thing that's going to reconnect this kid. Curriculum isn't the thing that's going to answer the question, what are my parents going to do? It's not, that's not.
So, man, there's a couple things I want to say here. And it's so good morning to Gary. Good morning to Rochelle. They're both here.
Thank you
Gary,
for being here.
we appreciate it. Gary
Yeah.
posted a comment above that I'll get to in a second, but I want to hit this one first. That Gary says he's always apprehensive about using parents and others to shape behavior. This is like hits me so hard because the kids I'm working with, like they don't care. Either their parents aren't involved or they just don't care about their parents, what their parents have to say. And it's front and center because their parents, nothing their parents do is changing the child's behavior. So if you can imagine, that is literally not one of my plays anymore. And the other day when I was meeting with a student, it was an interesting conversation. This student became emotional, and I've never seen this student become emotional before. And then the student says, as a shot at me, well, you're going to tell my parents about this conversation anyway. And I said, and I kind of chuckled and I said, listen, I need you to understand, or at least I need to be very clear to you here right now. The reason why I report to your parents is because I'm a professional and I have a job to do. So the minute I tell you, oh yeah, you can tell me whatever you want, I'm not going to tell your parents, I've stepped over a line that I'm really not interested in stepping over. Your parents and your teacher and your principal and your social worker will all be notified of what's happening here today. That is my job. Now, you can cry about that all you want. You can use that as another distraction. Because I say to him, you're just using distractions. Go ahead, keep spitting them out. Tell me when you're done so that I can jump in. We have a relationship where I can talk to this student this way. Say, this is just another excuse. What am I leaning on now? I'm leaning on, what does your life look like, kid? Put on your vision goggles and look down the road. How does this play out? If you can't go to school now, for whatever reason it is that you won't tell anybody, and you've got counselors, you've got social workers, like you have people you can talk to, their job is to listen. If you're not going to go down that road now, bro, I don't see you going to grade 9 every day in 2 years. I don't see you going to grade 8 next year. Why would you? You don't go now. Well, school sucks. Well, school's going to keep sucking until you are part of the solution. And I'm getting the vibe you just don't want to be part of the solution. But you are going to, I guarantee you, you will wake up one day and you'll be like, whoa, I had all these people here ready to help me. I just tossed it. Now I say to him, maybe you're not ready. I get that too. But when you do snap out of it, I don't know who's going to be around to help you. I certainly won't be because it's not in my job description. I'm gone. So I'm like, what can we do? I'm here every second day. I'm on your porch. What can we do? Silence. I'm like, this is good. Silence is good because he didn't have any comebacks. He didn't want to talk about it. So I'm like, okay, I pushed a button. You're thinking, you're feeling. That's all good stuff. I know your parents aren't going to do shit. I get paid to be here, so I'm here. This is my job. And I'm gonna report. I'm like, you think that's a chink in my armor? Chink away all you want. I will report as I'm supposed to every single friggin' time. I don't tell them everything that you spit out of your mouth, but they want to know. Hey, Chidiak, you've been to the house for the third time this week. What's going on? They want to know, and I'm going to tell them.
My I can see you're
Gary,
gonna put it up. My Let me just throw this in because I
throw it
it'll
in.
you leave it up. You can leave
No,
that up on the screen, yeah, for sure. Um my one of my and I do have a few of these. One of my regrets, deepest regrets in education were the times that I called home to deliver information, knowing full well that I was going to trigger the parents to have a hostile response towards their child, and knowing full well that the child would be made sad, made angry, made fearful, um, where I knew that by me calling and having a conversation, and I'm saying where I knew exactly what I was doing. I was calling home to get the kid in shit because I didn't have a way to connect with the family. And this is why I go back to, like, if we're supporting the kid, we're supporting the community. If I don't have a way to help the kid that doesn't result in them getting the strap, then I'm also complicit in that pathway. Imagine the teachers in your history that knew that by calling home to talk to Papa Chidiak, that result in you getting a whooping. And this is something that I will say on the inside, and we got educators in the room, but this is a thing that teachers know. They know exactly the families. They know exactly the families where the relationship isn't strong enough for the parent, between the parent and the teacher, for you to have a conversation with the parent where the parent says you're able to sort of like keep the parent in a balanced state so that them to support the kid at home is actually something that looks like support. And it's not just like, I'm taking your phone away. You're grounded for the weekend. That's it. You don't get to go to the dance. And we can sort of we can kind of offload it and say, but this is my job to do. I do have to communicate data home. I do have to communicate behavior benchmarks home. I do have to communicate literacy, numeracy, social events home. But I've never been around teachers that have ever said, like, I really regret some of these calls that I've made. There's a righteousness sometimes, especially again, we go back to that, this thing that's happening in your classroom, and it's just like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm so angry. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to call home and I'm going to translate that moment where I feel this was really my badness of feeling in this moment of not being able to get this kid to comply. And I'm going to bug bomb the home. And I know full well that that kid might not come back for a couple days at the top of the week because they're pissed, depending on their age, or they're now in a fight with their family. And I caused it. I did that. I can be righteous and say it's my job. But the duality of it is I caused it. And it's one of my deepest regrets where I like the better part of it was I just needed to share my pain, my anger, or my fear with the family. And I did not have the relationship to walk them through that in a generative or in a productive fashion. So, and I would say part of that is part of the collateral damage sometimes of working in spaces, sort of, let's say, in spaces where I've been in programs where, like, to constantly work with individuals that are challenged by our current school system, or they produce challenge for our current school system, whether you're working in individuals that have behavior exceptionalities, or they have learning exceptionalities, or they have developmental or physical exceptionalities. I'm putting myself in a mandate where these potential where I'm going to be triggered quite frequently. And it's only been in this second half of my career in education, in this job of teaching, where I've started to realize how much work I need to do to figure out how do I deliver this information at home where I am assured that I am in partnership with the family. I'm not just saying, here you go, deal with your shit. Because I made some bad decisions with families that I knew that would have punished their kids, strapped their kids, removed things from their kids, like taken away their privileges. And some of those I could kind of say, yeah, I get it as a parent, but that's me also inciting trauma in the home. That is the power that I would say for myself, misusing. And I misused it with awareness. I misused it with intent. So I like this complication. I really love this complication where we've landed in this conversation. I've never come across, as usual, air high five to you, bro. I've never come, I've never walked in the staff room and had a conversation around teacher regret ever.
As teachers, I think it's safe to say that we've all used the parent thing, right? Like, I'm going to call your parents if you don't change or whatever. I know before I left the classroom, um, I would say to kids, I'd be like, listen, what I'm seeing here is like, it's off the hook. So we can fix it now or we can fix it later. But I am going to notify your parents, or I think I'm going to have to go down that road. And most of
Mhm.
the time they're like, okay, I don't want that to happen. I'm like, awesome. Why? And then I'm like, why do we have to get here for you to be respectful? Because it's always about respect for me. Like, the first couple of times you mess around, that's fine, but the fifth, sixth time, it's like, hey, I politely asked you to back off. Like, we're trying to get something done here. What's going on? Sometimes, and then I've learned with time, sometimes they can't tell you. So the teacher has to take charge, change the environment, provide the student with a couple of different avenues to get themselves out of a situation without them even knowing that there's one building, right? So that's the beauty, that's the art of teaching, some of the science too. But there have been times where I've just sat them down and said, you're off the hook. I've done everything I can do. You continue to push. I'm done. This is what's happening next. In my new role, I don't have any legs to stand on. They don't give
Mhm.
a rat's beep. They're like,
This is so powerful. Dude, this is so powerful because suddenly you have none. You have your power has been delegitimized instantly. Instantly. It you are in this groundhog day loop of being a supply teacher. So what do you do? I put that to you. What do you do? Because you have none of the Lego, you have none of the stability of that classroom, of everything that's a schema, a behavioral norm, this adherence to between the bells. I used to say to some students, at what point do you think you forgot to be a student? And I thought that was a really clever way to sort of get a kid to drill back into their, I'll say it, freaking trauma, because that's what came up every time. I remember in grade 3, this thing happened. I remember in grade 6, my family had this moment. And so I'm getting this like hardcore data based on a super simple question and realizing no one had any tools to sort of keep this thing from happening or to support the kid after happening. So you're the supply teacher now. You don't have the resources that you had in the classroom. You don't have the between the bells. You have none of the norms that get you there. You do what? I jumped in, but sorry, like, so where were you gonna go with that thought? Sorry, I totally iced it on you. Apologize.
what do I do when the parent trick isn't
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
Move on. I mean, I know that sounds so what do I do? I don't use the parents as the hammer anymore. I just use
Mhm,
them as just another layer. Like, hey, what are your parents gonna say? And okay, so I've also moved into this is really gonna hurt your mom, and I know you like your mom. Like, why? How do you navigate that? I say to the kid, how do you navigate that? This is gonna cause more conflict. And then it goes from like with a lot of my kids now, it's not just, hey, let's get your shoes on and go to school. It's, dude, you're sitting at home doing nothing. Like, you like phys ed. Do you want me to be in the building when you guys are doing phys ed and you're in the gym doing your thing and then like I can walk you home? Like it's gotten to the point where it's just with a lot of my students, it's just real talk. It's real talk. It's like if you can only do phys ed, okay, like let's show up at school for phys ed. And then when it's done, I'll walk you home and I'll notify everybody. And it's like, so the kid could agree, and then I could reach out to the school and say, "Hey, this is what's the kid's willing to do, and I'm willing to support it." And they could say no. That's fine. If you say no, then I'll tell them we can't do it, and then I'll have to find another way to try to get them to school. But most of the time, the schools say, "Okay, that's awesome.
mhm.
Okay, let's give it a shot." Um, I don't know. I feel like I'm so far gone. I don't even know how to answer your question because the conversations I'm rolling in now are not, "Hey, put your shoes on, let's go to school." That works 2% of the time. The other 98% is just, "Hey, I'm here. I'm here. I'm yours for the next 30 to 60 minutes. What do you want to talk about? I'm going to ask you questions about what's going on. How are you feeling about school?
I
What's
feel like we're
making."
coming back to that point about grace.
Well, I mean, I okay, so I can at that point in time, I can just tell my principal this isn't working. I'm not going back. That's not an option. That's not part of my job. Or I'd have nobody on my roster.
Mhm.
I'd be sitting around doing nothing all day. So it's just you revisit and you try different avenues and I'm dialed in listening to them. I pick up on the things that they drop as much as I can so that I can use that as fodder for the next conversation or the next maybe they let me in just a little bit. They open the
Mhm.
door a crack and then I kick it out of the way like a friggin' Navy SEAL. I bust in and throw in the flashbangs, right? Because it's
Oh my
like
god.
I know that visual is a bad one, but it's a good one because I exploit it. They give me this much and I exploit that intel
Mhm.
and I milk it for all it's worth. Hey, you said this. And I'll be like, that shows me you care just a little bit. Can we explore that? They're like, I said something that shows I care. I don't care. I'm like, you do care. Come on, let some of it out, you know? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it gives me
Mhm.
a little bit more intel to come back the next day or to I find now when I talk to the so some of my best interactions with the social workers I work with is when they tell me, "Roland, I'm tapped out. I don't know what to do next." And I'm like, "Give me a high five because I've been tapped out for about 2 months. So this is good that we're both tapped out. So it's going to force us, I think, to think differently or come at things in a different way." My whole job is different way. Like really, I this job has helped crack my head open into you got to be open and you got to keep that thinking differently, moving. Some of my best conversations are me, the principal, the social worker, and teacher saying, at this very moment, I got nothing. I got nothing for you, and I don't know what to do next. I'm gonna sleep on it,
Mhm.
and I'll tell you what happens the next time I visit the student. And I'm looking for a crack in their armor. I'm looking for more intel, what's going on at home, what's going on outside of home. Even sometimes you're gonna love this. And then we're gonna get into we got lots of comments here. Um,
I love
sometimes
it. I love it.
when I visit the house,
Mhm.
dude, I can't believe I haven't told you this. I will park in a different place. I'll walk up the driveway in a different way. I'll stand in a different spot on the porch because I'm
Mhm.
always like, how do I shift? What do I do? I need something different. I need to come
Yep.
at this different. I don't know what's going to come. So I even, yeah, I'll tell you this and then I'm going to stop. The one kid's house has like, I don't know, 6 steps that are designed nice and architecturally up to the door. I always ring the doorbell and take a couple of steps back.
Mhm.
And they have a camera at their door, so I always make sure I'm standing like so that the camera can see me. They come out, and the one time the kid came out and I said, "Don't take offense, dude, but I'm gonna sit on the step and face away from the door." And the kid's like, "What?" So imagine I turn around, so now the kid sees my back. I sit on the top step and I'm just staring down the street. I'm like, I just want to sit. I just want to look. The sun's shining. This is like this is beautiful and I'm going to soak some of this in while you and I talk. And he's like, "You're not going to look at me?" I'm like, "Well, you're welcome to sit beside me or stand in front of me, but like I'm telling you, I'm not losing this moment right now." So what the kid do, puts his boots on, comes out, walks in front of me down 3 steps, and then we start chatting. If I would have said to this kid, "I want you to come down and stand here," he would have been like, "F you, I'm not doing that." But
Mhm.
that's not how we rolled, and I just needed a moment. And in that moment, I was still the camera could see me.
Mhm.
The kid knew I was there for him. But I'm like, "I gotta sit down. I wanna sit down and I wanna just see." Down the stairs and looking at me, I'm like, "Okay, we have a relationship. There's a little bit of respect. The kid's willing to meet me where I'm at, and I'm willing to
Yep.
meet the kid where they're at." So that is a huge success for me. To other people, they're like, "Who cares?" That's huge for me at that moment in time. I'm always looking for something different. I never would
Mhm.
have done that before.
Mhm.
Okay, Gary, I think I posted this
Yeah,
apprehensive
yeah.
about using parents. Rochelle, very interesting convo. Unfortunately, she's going to have to go listen later as she heads to confirmation. So
Mhm.
I wish you and those students a blessed day, Rochelle, because
Mhm.
I know you don't teach confirmation age kids, or maybe you do now. I don't know. Um, Gary says struggling students don't need us to point to others. They want to know that through our actions and comments that we are interested in them,
It
not
reads
passing them along.
it reads you I mean, you're it's I would rather, and I have, tell the kid directly, "I don't know what to do next to help you," than to infer that or enforce that by telling their parents and having them deliver the message of discipline to the kid. And I've actually had some really nice successes with kids when they haven't been able to do a thing or access a thing or feel good about a thing, to openly say, be appreciative for the fact that they've presented something that I don't have a quick answer for. Because like you and the stairs, I will say to the kid, "Can we talk again next week? Let me go do some research. Let me talk to some of my people to help me understand and see if there's other resources I could get to." That was a valuable tool. It's and transformational tools. So back when I was doing, again, working in suspension and expulsion, there were a lot of times where I would say to the kid, I need to contact so and so at your school. And the kid would say, "Don't bother. Don't bother. He's an asshole." And I'm like, "No, I have to." I said, "I get your experience with this individual hasn't been great." I said, "You haven't said one kind thing about this person yet. Let me try, because we all sort of approach people in different ways. So I'm kind of revealing my toolbox." And kind of like you, like I have ways that I can flex that this kid can't, where adult to adult, I'm in a program that asks these questions. Like there's so many pieces of power that I have, that I can sort of have conversations that the kid would never have access to. And I used to love coming back to the kid with the answer based on me connecting with someone that they thought did not give a shit anymore, because it was read as they were willing to support. Because I said to the kid, "Let me work on this and then come back with that." But that happened quite often, right? Like the kid articulating that, "Okay, cool, take all the time you need, but you're never going to be able to do it." I'm like, "Whoa, watch me. Watch me. I love that. Watch me. Watch me get something." I said, "All I need from you right now is time. Give me 2, 3 days to have that conversation. That's all I'm asking. Just for you to come back. We'll talk about this in 3 days." I love that moment.
So for me, as long as there's still a trust and a respect, I know I'm okay.
Mhm,
And I know other people won't see that. I know my principal will get that. 100% she'll get that. Um, and sometimes I guess like sitting down and looking down the street was a test. Hey kid, like I need to see, do you care that I'm here? I would say I would say almost all of my students care in terms of like they there is a level of respect and care for when I come and visit, that they
mhm.
don't blow me off unless something bad has really happened. Um, and that's a step in the right direction because they're not going to school and getting it from anybody in the building, right? And they're not getting it at home because the way they treat their parents and stuff. Um, that's a win. Um, okay, let's continue with these comments. And
Okay.
I want to layer something on Gary here. So Gary, 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 I'm sorry. I believe you're the program head for student success. Correct me if
Mhm.
I'm wrong. But
Ooh.
Gary's working with, well, I would go into Gary's classroom last year all the time because some of my re-engagement students were also connected to Gary and student success. So Gary is a dude who puts his money where his mouth is. I know that for a
Mhm.
fact, and I know those kids appreciated him and everybody else in student success. So I really appreciate Gary's perspective because he does my job, but he doesn't leave the building. And maybe he does. I don't know, but I know Gary puts in time that he doesn't have to with these kids. So big thumbs up to Gary for the work he does as an educator. Gary says, "Why do we as educators play the parent contact card dispor- dis? I'm not going to be able to say
Just
disproportionately
good job.
around
Good job. Yeah.
thanks around negative behavior, and don't feel the equal pressure or obligation to do the same around positive behavior and progress." I think, well, I know I'm pretty good at that because I report to parents daily, so I'm constantly telling them what's happening, what I observe, and there's not so good things there, but there is sometimes good things there. So I do both. I land on being more factual, and that can be good and bad. What about you, Chris?
I think that humans are hardwired to notice and share bad news far easily than good news. Bad news, you're already feeling at deficit. So I think there's a natural tendency when you realize that you're in a space of deficit to draw people in to help you with a deficit. And I think that when you're in a space of abundance, as in good news, I think humans are hardwired to protect that. I fundamentally, that's where I start. And when, if you're at a deficit, There's emotions that go along with that. And if you're in pain, there's a very sort of narrow list of physiological and sort of psychological responses when you're in pain, right? Like we know discomfort is fight, flight, or freeze. We know that if you don't have the tools to sort of bring your sympathetic system down, depending on your learning, parasympathetic kicks in, and depending on how diverse your toolkit is, right? You might choose to talk. You may choose to punch someone in the face. And that's like your parasympathetic giving you permission to do so. Or maybe the parasympathetic saying, I'm out of here. Do what you got to do. I'll be back in 10 minutes after you finish blacking out. So, like, I do think that as just big old animals, we protect abundance and we share pain. I think that's my short answer to that. That's my observation. I think there's scientific grounding in that as well. Um, and I think that depending on how you perceive, depending on your sort of like perspective, like, and if you yourself have experienced similar pain, it becomes more complicated when you share it. If you yourself have sort of always had abundance, then that also changes how you sort of protect it, right? So, but that's my base point. We share pain, we protect abundance.
I'm not going to push back on that too much because I don't disagree.
Mhm,
Um, and unfortunately, in my world, there seems to be there's a lot more negative. But you've seen, I think, I don't know what you've seen, but I feel like I've done a really good job of finding the light amongst all the darkness because it just seems like that's the world I live in. That's the
mhm.
type of work I'm involved in, which is I call it dark. Um,
I think a good thing in that is to realize, so if you're in the pain part of it, is to analyze how much of it is yours.
mhm.
And if you're in the abundance, you could almost ask the exact same thing. Because if you ask that exact same thing about abundance, that can lead you to sharing. If you ask it about when you're in pain, it could actually lead you to dealing with your own shit. Like, it's a good question to sort of put over either.
Yes, for sure. And I've become more, maybe now at this point in my work, I've become more
Mhm,
attuned to reflecting on what's happening in front of me and how it might connect to me. And there are so many connections. It's actually quite it's fascinating, the connections. Like when I see a kid acting a certain way, I'm like, whoa, that was me
mhm,
inside. It
mhm,
didn't come out that way because I wasn't allowed to make it happen. And then I think to myself, so there was a stop block in my world as a kid. There was there was no way I think I would flip that switch and stop going to school because
mhm,
I believed it would lead me to death, right?
mhm,
These kids, they hit that switch and I don't think they care. And I never got there. I never got to, at the end of the day, the buck stopped with, if I make this choice and I stop going because I hate it, people treat me poorly there, I don't feel good there, I'm not learning, I'm in anxiety all day, I'm in fight or flight mode all day. That wasn't as scary as what my father would have done to me if I stopped going. These kids don't have that. They've gone past that line. So when I'm working with them, I'm like, holy cow, like in s- in a weird kind of sick way, I give them two thumbs up for stepping over the line because for me that would have been the scariest thing I could have ever done in my life. So I'm making connections to these kids and I'm finding that I'm in the right place to make those connections to connect to my life because I never thought it was that bad for me. But now that I look back on it, it was pretty bad for me. That's why I hated school. I never felt comfortable there. I never felt safe. But the alternative to me was way worse than going to school and feeling like a bag of shit than not going to school, which is that's messed up in and of itself.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so let's see if we can hit this. So, um, Gary,
Yep.
and Gary said yes, he is a student success consultant. Good, I'm glad I know your role, Gary, and I miss working with you. Um, why do we as educate? Oh, yeah, I
Yep.
had
We
that
hit
one.
that one.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm happy to share. I'm happy to share.
Hmm.
Um, when working with struggling disengaged students, meaningful progress is not easily apparent to others outside the immediate interaction. Yes,
Hmm.
yes. And I have to say though, my principal always listens to me and understands. She gets it. So I love that I have a my boss gets it. I love that because
This.
it's one less layer of like I invite and welcome sitting down with my principal to provide her with an update because it's the same structure. I'm like, okay, turn off the lights because I'm about to tell you all this shitty stuff, but I will tell you about all the good things that are happening in between all that I feel
Mhm.
is movement. And she gets it. And I love that because it's a safe space for me to talk about my work and I listen. And I always leave my meetings with my principal with something new for me to take away and go back and implement or try or consider. That's that's awesome. Professionally, I feel like Green Lantern, like I'm ready to rock. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. The whole I don't know if Gary would, agree with this, but I always found that this idea of student success is not fast food, right? Like that's the slow cooking uh movement in education. I like the quote here: when working with struggling disengaged students, meaningful progress. I would stop at a lot of parts here. Like when working with, I stop right away. Okay, who's the crew? Can you drop that quote back up for a sec? So when working with, I want to know about the crew. I want to know like who's in that box there of when working with, right? How much choice does the student have in the crew that's part of when working with? How much relationship does that kid have and is sort of engaging in the when working with? Struggling disengaged students is so loaded, right? I mean, it's a broad abstract kind of thing, because struggling for what circumstances, struggling who's enforcing that, struggling who put them there, right? Disengaged, that's your portfolio. I like the meaningful progress because right away I jump on that and I say, okay, those are wordy words that make me wonder, by whose metric are we saying that's meaningful progress? If we say, in the general sense, we're pretty comfortable with a kid deciding how they're going to demonstrate their learning to you in a classroom, back to the Lego bricks, that nicely constructed box that you can make with Lego bricks. Meaningful progress, and you've mentioned this, as long as the kid's in the process, right? Micro credentialing that meaningful progress is so important, and looking at it through a qualitative lens first and foremost for as long as you can before we have to get to quantitative. Because as soon as we get to quantitative, then we're all of a sudden we're working within what would be neurotypical, or let's say performance typical benchmarks that schools expect. Is this kid getting marks? Is their attendance good? Are they demonstrating learning skills? These are all very concrete and fairly reasonably simple things to assess with the tools that we've been giving. But meaningful progress, my God, like that's big and abstract, right? And it's not easily apparent. I would say if it ain't apparent, then someone's lying at the table. Someone's lying. They're denying, they're blocking, they're obscuring. Because I would say, as you have said, spending time with the kid, it's apparent what success is. You just shared a story of a parent, which I'll change that to clear, right? Clear in some way. The kid walking down the stairs to stand in front of you to engage in a meaningful conversation. 4 steps of progress to play ball in a frame that you created. And outside the immediate interaction, well, that makes me feel like at some point someone's going to ask me. And I remember back in, when I was doing alt ed, okay, so what's the credit conveyance you're aiming for this year in your alt ed program? I'm like, what? Aiming for? You want me to aim for credit conveyance? Come on. I couldn't do any part of that first statement. If I told them that first statement you just had from Gary, I couldn't do a single damn thing in the first 17 words of it. If I told them how many credits I wanted to aim for. These aren't push-ups, you know? This isn't it's not something, we're not collecting trophies here. It's a Fortnite. Come on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
I
what I
yeah,
learned
I
from
just
struggling and
yeah.
disengaged students. The learning is reciprocal 100%.
I love when they're willing to include me in their story.
Yeah,
I deeply I so respect that it's not my story and I'm being invited in to get a glimpse. I understand the power of it when they've spent the first 22 meetings with me talking about how much they hate school and how much they hate that effing person back at the other school. And I sit there and I can take in the story. And then at some point they look over and they're like, "Hey, what's that sticker on the back of your phone?" I'm like, "I gotcha."
I love it when they let me in. And
Mhm.
when I say let me in, it is that they they will talk to me. They might
Mhm.
not tell me everything, but they will talk to me. They will establish a relationship.
Yep.
What you were saying before I started talking reminds me of a student that I had last year in grade 11, and the credits, like, how are we going to get these credits? And so I was working every second day with this kid virtually.
Mhm.
Did I ever tell you the story about this kid who never turned his camera on? Then the one day he did, I literally did this. I'm like, "Hey, do you know that your camera's on?" Because he had
Mm.
never he had never showed me his face. So I'm working with this kid,
You're on your
and
22nd meeting. Something finally
oh, it was
changed.
like my
Yeah.
58th meeting or
Of
something,
course, the
right?
number. Yeah, yeah.
It's
Celebrate the
like it was
number. We're good.
high. It was high.
Yeah, I love it.
And two things I want to say about this kid. The first one is that at one point near the end of the school year, this kid was starting to pull away, and I'm like, "Listen to me. Are you listening to me?" The kid's like, "Yeah, I'm listening to you." I said, like, something like, "Come hell or high water, you are getting these 2 credits." And I said to the kid, "I'm going to be selfish here for a second. We did not spend 8,000 sessions online, an hour apiece, to work on your English and math for you not to get these credits. You are getting
Yeah.
these credits." I said, "Your teachers have literally manipulated the universe to ensure that they could do everything they could do on their end to help you. I am here, blood, sweat, and tears every second day for at least an hour. I will drag you to the finish line." And the kid would laugh because the kid was old enough. He was in grade 11, right? He's old enough to
Yeah.
understand. He's like, "Okay, okay, Mr.
Yeah,
C."
exactly. Okay, 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 okay,
I'm
okay.
like,
I got
"Don't
this.
don't even. Like, I'm gonna
I
go
love it.
rogue on you. Like, not we're getting these credits." So, and he did get both the credits, which was friggin' awesome. It made my year. But so as you can imagine, so every time we get in, and half of those times were my computer's not working. There was something always going on, right? So one of the times, and the kid would have his friends over. So like we're working and I hear somebody laugh and I'm like, "Bro, like I don't mean to be rude, but are you alone? What's going on over there?" "I got my buddies here. They want to go hang. They want to go skating." I'm like, "Are you doing your work?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm doing my work, but they're just here. Like we're going to leave as soon as we're done." I'm like, "Okay, whatever, right?" So the one day, log in, and the camera comes on and there's a kid on the other end, and I'm literally like, and I was just trying to be respectful. Like, I literally put my hand so I couldn't see. I'm like, bro, your camera's on. Do you know? Like, I shouldn't be seeing you, because I had just become used to never knowing what this kid looked like. He goes, "No, Mr. C, I felt like turning it on today." I was like, "Oh." Put my hands down. I'm like, "You don't look anything like what I pictured you." And then we talked for 10 minutes about, he's like, "Well, how'd you picture me?" And then, "Well, I assume this and I assume that." And then I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, that's your bedroom. That's a cool poster on the wall." I'm just trying to make it normal, right?
Mhm.
He never had his camera on after that. But that day he was like, "Yeah, I'm cool. This is what I look like. This is who I am." I'm like, "Oh, so you do exist. It's not just like you're not just playing like a recorded track in the background or something." But Yeah, that kid was something, but I remember saying, like, "Do not make me come over there and drag you to the finish line, because at this point, that's what's gonna happen. You're not gonna self-sabotage these 2 credits that we've been working on for a very long time, that everybody people have usually it's the universe that dictates what's gonna happen. These people stood on their heads to manipulate the world to bring this to you. You are gonna
Mhm.
get these 2 credits. It's gonna happen because I earned these 2 credits. Like,
I love how this
we're gonna get them."
Yeah, yeah, I love how this totally flips the script on what we look at as, rigor, right? Like that rigor is more akin to, "We're not stopping halfway through this workout." You're going like Goggins on the moment. Like, "You still have 25% left in the tank, and I'm gonna stick with you until you dump that," right? You're gonna get it out. Yeah. Yeah, Gary's on point there. That idea of feeling blessed, connected, responsibility is important as well. And, when a student chooses to trust me, I think we sometimes misinterpret the moment when a kid says, like, if you call home, I'm in big trouble. There's big responsibility there. You action that and call home, and the kid does get in big trouble, spanked, grounded, things taken away. I think there's space to consider how you've wielded your responsibility. I think there's room for a discussion there. And again, I said I've never come into the staff room where people are sort of talking openly about um openly where they are sort of just saying, yeah, that was a mistake. I should have never called home. Tends to fall a bit more on the righteousness. I did it because I had to. I did it because it's my job. Like they create that quantifiable distance between them, the action, and the outcome. So
Um, I agree 100% with what Gary's saying, and, that's I think that's I think where, for me, the grace comes from. The
mhm,
grace I give my students is that I only ever ask that I ask that you meet me halfway. Doesn't always happen, but I just ask for, like, some decency and respect. That's all. Decency and respect. What does that look like? Answer the door when I come to visit you if you can. Like, if you're not in the bathroom or whatever, answer the door, talk to me, work with me, joke with me, um, because I like to think that on the other end of all that is something really positive, which I see with some of my students now, right? Like, I've invested a lot of my professional time, but
mhm,
also a little bit of personal time. Like, I was telling you that some of the things, now that we're getting close to the end of the year,
mhm.
there's relationship, there's work, but there's also some fun, right? Like, I've told you, I've brought donuts for students. There's another student. Him and I have an agreement that we're going to have Chinese food at lunch together. Um, these are the things that it's like. This is what in the classroom, as a classroom teacher, I'd be doing these things with my class. We'd be having celebrations of our learning and our experiences. There would be food involved because breaking bread is a whole other way to connect to somebody, right? There is there is this business of, like, me going out of my way to do things with, like, my money to demonstrate care and respect, which all teachers do. Like, it just looks different to me. It's a one-on-one, it's not a one on 23. And it goes a long way. Like, one of the students I work with, Iron Man is his nickname. It was his birthday yesterday, but I wasn't going to see him yesterday because it was a PD day. And when I work with Iron Man, I'm also working with Bob. That's his nickname, another kid's nickname. Bob and Iron Man are in the same class. I work with both of them. And the other day, um, we were in for recess. Their classroom teacher was working at her computer. The other grade 8 teacher came in to talk to the classroom teacher. And as I was talking to Iron Man, I was saying, hey guys, like, we're in the realm now where, yeah, we're doing math, we're doing science, but you also have to keep your eyes open on me for how I interact with people, because I'm modeling for you what it looks like to have what I would call like a normal conversation with somebody else, right? Like I'm modeling these things for you. So I need you to pay attention. Um, and I say sometimes it's not easy to model these things because I'm not feeling it, but there's a way to operate in society. You can choose to operate that way or not, but it's going to take you a long way if you can operate a certain way. That's my life experience gift to you. And Iron Man says, Iron Man's always got like he just looks at me and then he says something and it always kind of makes me laugh. He goes like you're kind of like being a father figure. And the grade 8 teacher hears him and starts laughing. And Iron Man looks over at him. He's like, "What are you laughing for?" And then the teacher, quick on his feet, says, "Well, Mr. C being a father figure to anybody is hilarious because of I know Mr. C outside of school, and it's hard for me to imagine sometimes he's a dad, right?" But Iron Man is starting to like some of this stuff is starting to sink in to Iron Man's operating system. And for me, that brings me selfishly a great joy that not only am I helping with the math and the science, I'm helping like Iron Man. This is how you talk to somebody. You look at them in the face if you can. I mean, sometimes kids aren't comfortable for whatever reason, but you look at them, you smile, you mirror what they're doing in a positive way. You ask them how they're doing, you ask about their world. You don't just tell them what it is you want or what you need. There's a way to navigate the world, and it's starting to sink into Iron Man. Now, this whole business about being like a father figure, and then I think I quipped back and said, if I were your dad, you'd be grounded for a very long time. And then we all laughed, right? There's a little bit of humor there, but that kid's got something going on right now. So I need to grab it and I need to milk it as long as I can to get him to the finish line. And so yeah, he told me about 1,000 times it was his birthday on the PD day. So what did we do? I brought a donut for Iron Man and Bob. Why not? I presented the donuts. I said, "Hey, happy birthday. These are for you." Iron Man gets to pick first, because Bob is like, "Oh, I'm gonna grab one." I'm like, "Bob, it's not your birthday. It's Iron Man's birthday. Do we want to eat first or do you want to do your math first?" "No, no, let's eat." Okay, they eat. Then they literally did their math. Like they had a worksheet to kind of warm them up. And it was awesome. "Hey, Mr. C, I don't understand. Can you help me here?" "Yeah, let me show you what to do." "Okay, which one are you on now?" And those are the moments that I want to get to, that we want to get to. They're doing their work. They know when I come around, it's going to be a good time, but it's also, I'm going to push them. They're cool with their classroom teacher. The administrator is telling me that these guys are walking around the building. They're not causing problems. They're engaging with people. They're in a good place as far as they can be being at school with whatever problems they have at home. That's the goal. That's the goal. Do I get there with all of them? No, but not all of them are ready to get there. That's the other thing people don't want to hear me say. They want edu magic, right? They want edu magic with my wand, but it takes time. It takes relationship. It takes the kid flipping a switch. I don't know what that switch might be. For these two guys, the switch is me. And I don't mean that like I just mean that like they needed the one on one coaching. They needed the real talk. Oh, you're muted. I'd love to hear what you really have to say.
I was just breathing and just I was probably no, it's I would say the Lego bricks. That's the mortar, right? That's the connector. That's the it's not going to be comfortable, but we're going to do a little bit of this stuff to kind of take where you are at in your life to sort of connect with what a school can offer. And like I said, it might be a six brick connecting weirdly with the edge of just a three, but if you've managed to make the connection, then something you have a better opportunity to stay in that relationship longer to figure out what the narrative could be with this kid. It's not the aiming for the credit conveyance, it's just getting them connected to start to slowly use the resources that have not worked so far. So yeah, it's the long game. It's the first step in the long game. So
Oh boy. Okay. Anything else you want to drop, Chris?
no, man. No,
Did you draw
no,
something
I'm good.
today?
Kind of. I was caught up in this conversation, so it's a little bit of a mess, and I can't even pick it up because it's still wet, and sometimes that happens. But let's see if I can.
I
Let's see
saw
if
you with the blow dryer.
yeah. It's. I think I'm getting too much light blow. Oh, there we go. Some of it. I've got too many production lights on. It's literally just an abstract blob of glue and purple. Yeah, I was literally. I was. It's a work in progress. There we go. That's it, shids. It'll have to dry before I can even get a friggin' good picture of it. So
I think I've said this before and I'll say it again. Whatever you decide to do with your time and your art is your thing.
yeah,
I think it's
appreciate that.
cool that there's well, what kind of jerk would I be if I'm like, you better produce something by the end? No,
We'd
you
be a
want to do that?
teacher.
You want to do that? Um, I think it's cool. Um, and I think it'd be an amazing coffee table book. The
About
decoded
coffee.
podcast art.
There we go. We get into the publishing, right?
Yeah. Dominique's here. She says, thanks for the great conversation
Hey,
today.
Dominique.
Lots to
Yeah,
reflect on,
appreciate having people in the room. Appreciate
for
having
sure.
people in the room. That's cool.
So, as far as I can tell, this week it was Dominique, Gary, and Rochelle got to chill
Nice.
with us a bit. Maybe other people, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's always nice to have the back and forth. Like, we
Yep.
do our bit, and it's great
Then
to
we
hear from people and keep going that way.
and then on with the day.
On with the day. Well, okay, it's come to an end. This
It
was
has.
season 6. Oh, you're welcome, Gary.
Hey, welcome, Gary. Peace, man. Peace.
Season 6, episode 30, number 248 of the Decoded Podcast. Clough, have an awesome day and the rest of your
You as
weekend.
well. You as well,
Peace out.
man. Stay dry.
Doing my best.